Loretta Stagnitto, welcome to the Star Coach Show.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here this morning.
I am excited to be here with you. You are there with us at the crack of dawn for you, so you're 2 hours earlier than me, and I appreciate I appreciate the power of what the world offers us in the way of technology and being able to connect with awesome people from around the world to bring their genius to the show. We're actually going to be talking about how we can use some of that technology even in ways of how are we creatively offering services to clients at a more affordable rate. So that's something exciting. What
Exactly.
Loretta and I are going to be diving into is this whole concept of coaches. If you're working with those mid-level managers, those managers that are sandwiched between the C-suite and everyone else, and they're really looking at how do I potentially grow within the company? Is there room for me to grow within the company? Am I experiencing burnout from managing up, managing down, all those things in between? Loretta and I are going to be having a conversation around how do you meet people where they're at and help them expand their lens, help them kind of step into that space. And how are you as coaches staying competitive in a very competitive market in meeting those objections, offering creative options for your coaching? I mean, like, there's so many good things we're going to be talking about. So do not go anywhere. We are going to be diving into that in just 2 seconds. I just want to once again welcome you to the show and let you know that you listeners are the reason that I do this show. And when I get emails saying, Meg, that episode was exactly what I needed at that moment to get over whatever obstacle was there, that lights me up. So the whole reason we're getting close to 9 years of the show is to help you coaches thrive and leaders who are listening. Loretta's going to have some great tidbits for you. If you're in this very space that we're talking about, you want to tune in too and really think about how am I showing up in this space and what can I do to protect my health and well-being as well.
Exactly.
Remember that we have a new Star Coach episode that comes out every Wednesday morning. So be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so that you never miss a moment of incredible guests like Loretta and the information that they're bringing forward. I would love it. Just love it. And I don't want to make it about me, but right now I'm going to make it about me. If you would go to the YouTube channel and subscribe at Star Coach Show, it is my mission to build out that YouTube channel because that's a great place for me to leave my Tuesday tips and to give you little nuggets of wisdom. It's just a beautiful place to offer more to you. And YouTube will know that I'm offering more if more people subscribe. So that's my little request of all of you. I thank you for that. And now let's dive into this super important topic. So, Loretta, the reality is there are so many people sort of sandwiched in that place of I've got, the C-suite to report to and the powers that be there. I am absolutely critical at this mid-level, and yet maybe I feel frustrated or like there's no place for me to move up. I'm feeling burnt out. And when I reach out to a coach, maybe I feel like it's just too expensive to do. So all these different dynamics that we're going to be looking at. Let's start with just how would you describe the challenge that mid-level leaders face in organizations? Oh,
Yeah.
and I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm so sorry. I just asked Loretta a great question, but I forgot to tell you about Loretta. So before Loretta gives us that, I don't know why I got so excited. I forgot to tell you who Loretta is and why I wanted to have her on the show, but that's super important. So hold that question, Loretta, because I'm coming to
Got
you
it.
just with that
All
question.
right. All right.
So why did I want to have Loretta on the show? Well, because she's dynamic and she is experienced and she is a certified executive coach. She's the president of Loretta Stagnitto Leadership Associates. She does both online training, or she does online coaching and training that specializes in leadership development for executives, for mid-level leaders, ding, 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 exactly what we're talking about today, and high-performing teams. So when people reach out to be on the show, I'm like, okay, what is this person's perspective and what's that going to bring to the audience? And with Loretta's over 20 years of experience with executive coaching and the way that she looks at how coaches can be competitive in the market and the programs that she's put together, I was like, yeah, no brainer to have Loretta here. So while Loretta has oodles of experience. We'll have her whole bio in the show notes. I wanted you to know that what made me excited to have her on the show was her passion for these mid-level managers and leaders, which is kind of my sweet spot as well. And just the fact that the reality is, as everything shifts and moves, it's often these people that get squished. So we want to unsquish them. We want to give you some tools for that. And now, thank you, Meg, for it's Monday morning, everybody. I was off my game. Let's go to my question about what do you see as the challenges for these mid-level managers?
Yeah, great. It's a great place to start because I call these folks the unsung heroes, right? They're the ones, like we said, between the C-suite, the intermediary, and the individual contributors. So, they have stakeholders to manage, employees to manage, and they're often the group that talks to customers as well. So they are really, really an important level of leadership for organizations. They're the ones that are responsible for executing on the company's strategies and keeping stakeholders happy and being collaborative and developing people and all of those things. But yet they get the least amount of support, right? Because as we know, executive coaching has been really for higher level leaders. And this is
Mhm.
the level that I think could use the support the most, but companies are hesitant to invest in them. And maybe because they don't really see the value, right? That the importance of this level of leaders. And so what's happening, they're not getting promoted, they're burning out, they're leaving the organization for other greener pastures, or they're just giving up, saying, well, I'll give up my aspirations because at least I have a job and I have flexibility and those that, that thing, that sort of approach. And my theory is that when they go for promotion, which of course is what we want, they're always said, well, you're doing all these great things, but you're not doing these things. And then they're told, and I've sat in calibration sessions where it's, one leader praises them and the other leaders, because we know it's not only up to one leader to promote you, right?
Right.
You have to have a group. Well, they don't do this or they're not doing that. So then the leader has to go back and say, well, I really wanted to, but you're not doing this or that. And then the leader's like, how much harder can I work? How
Right. And how much can I really, I mean, not everything can be a top priority. And yet, when you have all these different leaders who are, they all have different priorities. So if you're meeting John's priority, but you're not meeting Nancy's priority, and I'm only one person, I can do only so much.
and I have goals. And so isn't it good enough to just say, but I met the company goals? Shouldn't I get
Yes.
promoted based on that? So they're really in a hard spot. And if they I think where they get lost is, okay, so how do I focus? How do I pay attention? I like the analogy of we spend so much time working in the business, getting their jobs done, they don't work on the business, which means how do I work on myself so that I can let people know what I can do, how I can advocate for myself. So I think that's the problem that we try to solve. And as coaches, we're all sitting back going, I can solve that problem with coaching, executive coaching, peer coaching. I can solve that problem. But companies right away say, oh, it's expensive. And I'm not sure that's the right leader because they're just going to burn out anyway. So it's sort of this, vicious cycle. So my theory is that if we can, as coaches, and this is what we do, actually get the mid-level leaders to step back, to do what coaching does. Think about their self-awareness. How are they showing up? What are the things they're doing well and what are the things they don't do so well? So really that self-awareness, and then also getting feedback from others along the way, not just at promotion time where it's too late to change anything, to not be promoted. So how can you
Right, right,
back along the way, particularly under some benchmarks, leadership behaviors, how well you grow your bench, things that are important that you as the leader may not think, well, if I do more of that, maybe I can be better. You just don't have time. Don't have time to think about all those things because you're so overwhelmed with the work you have to get done. So if they're able to step back, they're able to get some awareness, some sense of how others see them, whether it matches their own perceptions or not, then they can really focus on what are those priorities. How can I say it's not only the priorities of getting the work done, but it's the
right.
priorities of me being a better leader. Maybe I need to build my bench better. Maybe I need to keep stakeholders happy. Maybe I don't have the relationships with key stakeholders that I thought I did. So taking the time to step back and then also learning some key skills that we as coaches can be more proactive in teaching. So rather than the director thinking, well, I have to go figure out how to have this difficult conversation, and I'm not really prone to doing that, or I have to figure out how to delegate better or whatever. But how can we also proactively give them some skills that are really important, not only at that level, but into the C-suite? Things like how do you manage your capacity and your commitments and really learn to prioritize? How do you give and receive feedback? And then do you even act to feedback when you get it? Because,
Mm,
we give lots of feedback, and there's leaders that either take it, and there's leaders that I've said, "Oh, yeah, I hear that all the time." Well, if you hear it all the time, then why aren't you
yeah,
working on it, right?
right, right.
So really taking some traditional what coaches actually do and giving the leader that opportunity so that they are able to advocate for themselves, right? So then they know that they have permission, so to speak, to advocate, to go to their leader and say, what things do I need to learn? To put together a development plan, to share that with the leader, saying, based on my feedback, based on what you've told me. So, how do we take a typical coaching methodology, if you will, what we do as coaches, but provide
Right.
it for this level of leader so that they can learn to advocate for themselves? So, when it comes time for promotion, they know if they're going to be promoted or not because they've been having those conversations all along the way. So, I think,
So
yeah.
so you lay out, let's get them to expand their lens. Let's give them tools and questions to think about and ways to show up as a leader that maybe they don't naturally think about. Yet we also laid out that companies are not necessarily investing in coaching for these people. Um, and so when we think about creative, what creative solutions have you come up with to help bring these questions forward, give these leaders a tool to be more proactive in their own evaluations, to be more proactive in their leadership growth, even if companies are not necessarily investing in their coaching?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, what do we hear as coaches, particularly as we try to go find clients, are things like it's too expensive. I don't have the money for this. We're having budget cuts, all of this other stuff. We literally don't have money to invest. And I like to say yes, and think about it as a retention strategy for those folks. Think about it as
Hmm.
succession planning. Or if there's lack of productivity because they're worried that they're going to get laid off, how can you invest? But it doesn't have to be a lot of money, right? Because coaches can't, there are creative business models that coaches can pull together to do this type of thing. What I have found that works are a couple different things. Short programs, right? Because the other issue around coaching is, I'm sorry, I don't have the time. If I had the
Right.
time, so I don't have the time and I don't have the money. Well, how do we make it so that it's maybe delivered more in smaller bites so that they understand the benefit of it, they learn it, but maybe it's only a 3-month program as opposed to
Hmm.
6 months, right? And how do you also put something together that you get that benefit of working with a one-on-one coach, but today there's a lot of coaching moving towards peer group coaching and online
Mhm.
coaching, right? These online
Mhm.
platforms, because as you were talking about technology earlier, that's the way we engage. And probably since the pandemic, that's probably the way a lot of the coaches coach
Right.
these days, right? So what I found is putting together an online coaching program where you can be really creative, where short, bringing cohorts together, which also makes it cost effective because then you've got,
Right.
from a coach standpoint, you've got capacity to work with several different, but you're getting bigger amounts in smaller amounts of
Right.
time that it takes you right through this process. But yet you do it in a structured way so that they can take the time to do it on their own. So I call it blended learning programs, where there's lots of platforms today where they can do online. You may deliver an assessment one-on-one. Well, there's ways they can take the assessment on their own. They can debrief themselves through an assessment, and then they can meet with you as the coach to talk about what they learned, not through 3 steps to do the assessment. Do this on your own through a virtual learning program or a self-learning program, and then make that one-on-one time with the coach really effective. And then also putting them together in cohorts, either within the
Mhm.
same organization, right? Because now you're thinking about, boy, how do I create that camaraderie and build the relationships with maybe cross-functional high performers? So they're learning from each other, and then the coach is working both one-on-one, but the peers meet and coach with each other. And what I find in these groups is when they are vulnerable to say what they're going through, someone else says, so am I. And someone
Right.
else says, "So am I." And all of a sudden they're thinking, "Ah, it's not
I'm
alone.
not alone.
I'm not
Yeah, I
alone."
thought it was just something I was doing or something yeah.
Exactly, right? So being really creative from a coaching standpoint in how do you break it down? How do we take our tools and maybe put it together in a way that's consumable, that's cost effective, so that when the leader, when you go to the sponsor and say, it's not your traditional 6 months, thousands and
Right.
thousands of dollars, but if we can get a small cohort together just for this amount of time, give them the tools, help them learn from each other. My experience is this level of leader shows up because they want that support. They
Right.
need that trusted advisor. So they come to your group programs, they put in the work. And the other thing I think when you put together some sort of a online program or some sort of a consumable program, you can give them the tools that, just like any type of coaching, what you put into it is what you get out of it.
Right.
So you give them enough tools that if they want to learn on their own, they can. Or if they just need to, what am I going to need to do because I have to meet with my coach tomorrow? They can do that on their own. So really being very creative as coaches in terms of how do
Mhm.
we take all of these tools and all of the things that we're really good at and maybe putting it together in a consumable way, offering it at a great price where there's still a good business model for the company and the coach, and the individual feels like they're being invested in, they're learning some skills, they're getting support, and yet
Mhm.
it's not costing a lot of money, it's not taking a lot of time. Oh, the company believes in me, so maybe I will
Right.
stay. Maybe I will be loyal. Maybe I'm not going to get promoted this time, but it's worth me staying. So those are all the things that I found and how we can be creative today with AI tools and all the virtual tools. Coaches can really be able to take a step back themselves and say, what can I
Right.
do to have a better business model in this market, in this environment?
I love that. And some of those questions that Loretta brought forward around, what are the skills that I like you can offer resources. They can actually consume things without being in a coaching session with you. And then bring those, how did that resource land on you? How did that article expand your awareness? And they can talk about it with their group.
Yeah.
So, because often I hear from coaches, well, I I know that I know things that my clients don't necessarily know. I've read books or I have models but I don't necessarily want to spend time in the coaching session teaching them. I want them to have that growth and evoke awareness. And so what Loretta's offering is how can you put those things together in such a way that it allows your clients to fill that gap of knowledge, gap of understanding, gap of whatever the gap is that's in the way, and then have that dynamic ability to learn from peers, which is such a growing, um, just a growing, I think, understanding in organizations that that is so valuable. I can say that when I first started being a mentor coach over 15 years ago,
Yeah.
I did one-on-one mentoring, right? Like, and then I realized over my mentees learn so much more if I do a hybrid program. So much more if I bring them together in group and they can coach each other and we can explore the competencies together and we can have rich discussion. They're then learning from the whole group. And then they've got their individual gaps that we do in individual sessions. But I don't even do one. If somebody approaches me for like 10 hours of one-on-one mentoring, I'm like, I just don't believe you're going to get as much out of that as if you are in a program. So you can go do one-on-one mentoring with somebody, but if you want to really, I believe in the program model, and that's kind of what you're saying. Let's switch from coaches into leaders, and it's the same kind of thing.
Well, and also the other value is that is after the program's over and after the coach goes away, the leader recognizes they've got these other cohorts that they can reach out to, that they can have a conversation with, because sometimes it's easier to have that conversation with someone that's more trusted and not inside your organization. But if you've built this
Right.
up in a situation where you honor each other's confidentiality and you support each other long after the coach goes away, that's important, and you've got that peer. And we all know we all need support. That's what coaching is all about. So if it can't be from a professional coach after the program's over, then at least you know how to be a peer coach to each other and you can really support each other. Yeah.
Love that. And yeah, we're building muscles, we're building listening, um, and that power of what questions can I ask myself? What questions can I self coach through and maybe offer to my peers, um, offer to the organization as a whole, and offer to those people that are coming up under me. Because what I have found when I help leaders learn how to use more coaching and more inquiry and more curiosity for themselves, they begin to use that for their teams, and the team is growing healthier leaders, like people who are more curious, just in general, kind of coming up through the organization. And how can that not be a good thing?
Exactly, right? So it's not only you learning to be you being coached, but you also learning to coach
Yes.
and by coaching others. And that doesn't have to be a whole methodology and all those other things. That simply, as you said, it's a conversation. It's a coaching conversation that gets them to think about how they might do things on their own or to be more strategic by asking more coaching oriented
Yes.
questions. Yeah. So again, it's a
Love that.
great skill to learn as well. Yeah.
So one of the things I'd like to lean into for a second, if you're game,
Yes.
is you've been doing this a long time. You've been working in organizations a long time.
Yes.
So because we have people of all different levels of experience listening to the show,
Mhm.
could we explore just a little bit? What are some of the impact that you've seen bringing coaching into organizations, how it has impacted the organizations? I think that in the coaching industry, sometimes it's just good to like talk about what did coaching do, or what impact has it brought, whether it's in these, programs that we're talking about, one-on-one, whatever it is. You've been doing it for 20 years. What kinds of changes have you seen?
Yeah, I think, the hardest skills I believe to teach are the skill of self-awareness because we think we're self-aware. Well, I know my strengths, I know my values, right? I know that. But particularly the higher level that we get up, we don't ask people, right, for feedback because we're the leader. And so we don't ask for feedback. And so we don't recognize we can learn from other people's perspectives, no matter what level you are. Even if you're a high level leader, you can learn from your staff 3 layers down because they bring a different perspective that you might not have even thought of. So I think coaching and just teaching the skill of self-awareness and not only
Hmm.
what I call internal self-awareness, but external self-awareness. So it's not only how I feel and see, but how do others see me? And then does it map? Because once I'm self-aware, then relationships, I've seen relationships change. I've seen, conversations change. I've seen people who, boy, I used to really not like that leader. And now that I have such a better relationship with them, I cannot believe I didn't even like them before. So I've seen that happen. So self-awareness is communication is another skill that's really, I think, one of the most difficult to build. And I think coaching can really help with just communication in general. And particularly this level of leaders, what I've heard in some of these group cohorts, when they talk about some of their frustrations, they'll say, well, leadership this, and we're waiting for leadership to do that. And I'll step back and say, guys, you are the leaders. Right? You have to be able to be confident enough, because that's what
Right.
those leaders look for. Be
Right.
confident enough in making those decisions. A lot of reasons why, folks leave the organizations, they're like, my leader just can't make a decision. And so I've just been dealing with that for a long time. Well, what if you made the decision and you brought the business case and you were able to explain why you made that decision and it turned out to be high value to the organization? So coaching actually helping build skills. I talked earlier about the skills for difficult conversations and managing capacity. Not everybody can do that naturally, right? And if you
Right.
don't have a propensity for liking conflict, you're not going to naturally go have a difficult conversation. And so it's going to fester. So coaching can work. I've seen it work holistically, and I've seen it work to actually just build certain things that companies will invest in to build those hard skills at all levels. And then they get a great ROI because they're like, well,
Right.
goals are met, and I've actually seen people grow. And when I started to mentor them and coach them rather than being very directive with them until
Right.
they sort of showed up on their own. But then again, you also have to recognize, is that person coachable? So
Right.
you have to be able to see, and companies have to be able to see that these are the leaders that I want. Succession planning. This level of leader in particular are the ones that are going to be moving into the C-suite. So how do you teach them skills now and then help with that succession planning so that they know how to advocate for themselves? And I think that's the hardest part. We sometimes at different levels don't realize that we have choices, and we can go in and advocate, and I can go ask my leader, what do I need to do? Why did this leader say this or that versus I just better wait for them to tell me, I can't bring it up. So learning to take more risks with all of that and building your
Hmm.
confidence as a leader, because when and the byproducts of that are leaders say, wow, they're holding this conversation with me, that all of a sudden it's a different, they must be able to
Right.
do this well as well. So it's that halo approach, right? So those are
Right.
all of the things that I think that really diving in and saying, let's support this level in particular, because we know that they're the rock stars, but it also has to be positioned as, I'm giving you this coaching because you are a rock star, right?
Right.
How many times do we look back and say, oh, I must be doing something wrong. They're offering me a coach. Oh no, I'm
Right.
doing something wrong. So how do you
It's like,
position it
yeah,
as?
we only offer coaches to people we really want to invest in who are our rock stars. Absolutely.
Exactly, exactly.
I loved your emphasis on, awareness, empowerment, choice, how shifting that perspective a little bit can make people, not make people, but like offer the opportunity to see ourselves differently, to see ourselves through a different lens in the way that we're showing up, and then think, how could I do this differently? And coaching takes, just brings an outside eyes, outside ears in to potentially, offer resources, but offer a different perspective and just challenge our clients to think a little bit about, well, what 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 could you do differently, or what else is possible. So I love all the experience that you have. I saw something bubble up for you there. What's coming
Yeah,
up for you?
I was thinking about even how we behave under stress, right? And if you think about how we behave under stress and how many who doesn't have stress in their organizations? We probably live in it every day. And that so what you also have to be really helping the leader learn is how do they behave under stress and how do others see them? And is it different, right? Because number one, if they see a leader behaving differently because they're stressed, then it's their behavior is going to change. So really being aware of when I am feeling pressure, do I put the pressure on others or do I know how to manage those emotions and really model it so that those people who report to me don't have to worry about, oh my, it's a stressed out leader and I can't bring them, I can't ask them this or that. Whatever. So, and we don't know that because we just get stressed on a regular basis. You go in and out of it every day. So being aware of what's causing you stress, how you behave under stress, either by asking people or stepping back and noticing, is another really big deal that I think coaching can help with, that sometimes we just don't, leaders are just not aware of, how they show up to others because they only maybe only see themselves in all the good times and don't,
Right.
when they're stressed, they don't think about how I'm showing up because I'm too stressed to think about that right now.
Right, right. That's not where my energy's going. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So that
Love
was
it.
what was bubbling up when I was thinking about, yeah, really having conversations around that and getting folks to recognize they're different sometimes when you are under stress. And is your environment such with workloads and everything else that maybe you're stressed all the time? And maybe that's how you're showing up all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And that is going to influence things like promotions and because other people's perception is their reality and what does that do to your physical well-being and your mental well-being and your emotional oh my goodness. So
Yes.
um all that is so key. I love everything that you're bringing forward. Everything that we've talked about so far, whether you're an internal coach or an external coach, working within organizations just makes a whole lot of sense. But let's shift for just a second to those people who aren't internal, but are maybe it, external, and they're saying, how could I find clients or what could what do I need to even think about in the way of bringing my services forward and making a profitable business for myself? I know that that's a barrier that lots of coaches hit. So, what would you like us to think about if we're external and we're trying to get organizations to notice us, or what we how we can position ourselves in such a way? And I think we talked about some of this earlier, but let's reemphasize some of that.
Well, as coaches, we're good at being coaches. And so we're not necessarily, some of us may not necessarily be good at selling our services, right? And particularly in this market, I've been coaching for many years and I always laugh. I'm like, I started coaching before coaching was cool because now either everyone is a coach and either an executive or leadership coach. And so just the whole idea of coaching is so broad these days.
Right.
So I think as an external coach, what I have found that actually makes more sense is how do you get the client to recognize that they have a problem and that positioning it not so much as I'm an executive coach, because people have their own perceptions of what that is, and they might know a
Right.
zillion others. So to
Right.
differentiate yourself, what might be a particular niche? Like, for example, I started to recognize this level of leaders is really key. So being able to just say, I work with this level of leaders. And sometimes, as an executive coach, you want to be, well, no, I work with the C-suite and all of that. But this level of leader will be the C-suite.
Right.
So being able to hone in on what problem you're trying to solve for the organization as one way of selling your services, as opposed to I do executive coaching and leadership development, and letting them perceive what that might mean. And I even started to recognize in around 2020 when the pandemic was going on and I was coaching in healthcare, more and more burnout in the workplace, a lot of anxiety. So I started really understanding corporate wellness and really now have a more of a bent to how do you notice anxiety in the workplace? How do you notice burnout in the workplace? And what specific tools can I give just to deal with that? So as a coach, being able to be a little bit more niche oriented and figure out what can differentiate you from a productized service, so to speak. How do you productize that service in a way that's resonating? This whole message of burned out, this level leader is really resonating when I talk to companies. And the idea that it's not only the people are leaving, but the companies are struggling because now they have recruitment problems. They can't keep recruiting at that level. So, and then also the other thing that I found is how do you get help as a coach? You may have to make some investment in, curriculum designers or people to help you. Because I had, just as you can imagine, years of a tool set. And when I think
Right.
about this tool set, the first time I created my program, the curriculum designer I was working with, we finally looked at it and said, whoo, boy, this is really going to overwhelm them if we start putting in all of this stuff. So getting that expertise, because we are experts in a certain way, but
Right.
we may not be experts in that type of design
Course design or
online or
yeah,
anything
yeah.
like that.
Understanding that less is more often when we're doing particular things,
Exactly.
yes, because we wanna
Because,
give them everything. We just
right,
want
because our
I have we just
little
wanna give
value.
it all. Yes.
Exactly, and we think it's all this value, and I might have to provide all of this, and they may only need this and think, "Whoa, look at all the value you provided me." So I think
Right.
just being able to step back and say, okay, if I want to create some productized services that I know is going to fulfill a particular need in an organization, how do I go in, how do I create something that addresses that? So through my coaching, I started to see this over and over again. This burnout, I can't get promoted. How is this going to happen? So I'm like, okay, there's an opportunity here, and then what is it that they're going to really need? So using your coaching expertise, because that's what we do when we start to work with the client, right? And then taking this and then saying, all right, I have all these tools, maybe I have this approach. Let me go work with someone who can quickly decipher this and say, well, if I was your client, I might only need these 3 or 4 things because I don't know what the value of all those tools are going to be. But it sounds to me like doing an assessment might be good, and then having this might be good. So having sort of an outside perspective of a
Yes.
different level of expertise that you could maybe say, let's create something, because now if it's a productized service, you can make your own you can get your own ROI out of it. It might take a lot of investment in, but eventually you're going to sell and you're going to start to see how that value comes back, and then it starts to sell itself, because then people start to say, I took this program or I worked with this particular coach. And when I even started marketing my program, I had people that had worked with coaches, and one woman in particular said to me, wow, this is way more structured than other coaches. That I've worked with a lot of coaches, and I like this structure because I can see a beginning and end. It's not like, well, if we do this, we might get this. And if we do that, we might get that. So how can you create something that you know is going to deliver an outcome, but it feels much more holistic and not just tactical? I'm going to help you with your executive presence. I'm going to help you with your presentations or whatever, which is where I think a lot of times coaches may go in, because it's business. All right, I can
Right.
do this piece, but it's also, how does that serve you? Because it doesn't, as the coach, allow you for anything long term, or for something where it's going to be much more consistent, rather than, well, I'm getting X amount of dollars from doing this type of coaching with this person and X amount from doing it with that person. So again, being creative in your
Good.
tools and asking
Yes.
for help, recognizing just because we're good coaches, we may not be good salespeople, we may not be good curriculum designers, right? And then it becomes collaborative, because that way you can put together the best programs given your expertise and their expertise. And we all have to invest. We invest in ourselves, we invest in our
Right.
businesses, right? We invest in marketing ourselves. So it's really being creative in that way as well.
So good. So we
Yeah.
started this conversation understanding that those mid-level managers have lots of opportunity and lots of challenges, and through your wellness approach, you know that their anxiety is going to be high and their burnout possibility is also high. So being able to determine what are some questions they can ask themselves, how can they self-coach, how can we as coaches create creative, innovative programs to meet that need. Because I also, when I first left my therapy practice to become a coach, thinking I wanted to help organizations be healthier places for people to work, I thought I'm going to need to work with the C-suites. And I discovered pretty quickly, actually, the people that I not only resonate with, but just seem like they are the ones that almost um, can leverage more space or need maybe more intervention just because they have so much responsibility, where those mid-level managers, they just spoke to my heart. And I think that might be, when you reached out, I was like, yes, we have like, let's get some information out about how to best help these leaders really thrive. But what I loved about your interview is that it wasn't just how do we, and not just, but it wasn't only how do we help mid-level managers. You gave such great information to the coaches listening about how can we challenge you coaches to think a little differently about what you're offering, to pivot in the space so that you can leverage things like technology and other brilliant minds, course creators and marketers and just different people who were all sort of on, and this is always my thing, we're on this earth together to do the heavy lifting together, so we don't always have to do things in isolation, and nor does that benefit us or our clients per se if we're just like, I can do everything myself. So everything you brought to the table today was so enlightening, and as we're beginning to wrap up our time, I'm wondering, like, what's the thing that you want to be sure people are thinking about as they walk away from your interview?
I think from a coach's standpoint, recognizing that you may have to work a little harder because it's a different world these days with the amount of other coaches out there, with everybody having different perceptions of what coaching is. Almost think about it like, think about when you sell your coaching, think about selling the benefits rather than the
The
features,
process,
right?
yes,
The
or the
features and the
features, yeah.
process and the benefits, and really figuring out how can you what's the problem that you're going to find everyone that you're trying to sell to going, yes, yes, I
You
agree,
get
I
me, yeah.
agree, right? Yeah, exactly. And so and how do you figure that out in your own coaching? Because I have learned this just through the clients that I'm working with, the peer groups that and the conversations that come up. I have the benefit of recognizing that a lot of different people are going all through the same problem. And so when you start thinking about the same problem and then going to all the different organizations and they're all saying yes, and then how you can, as an external coach, debunk that myth by being creative with, this is too good. What do we say? One of the big coaching questions is always, well, what's your risk by not doing it? And so you always ask, well, if you don't do it, what's the risk?
What's it going to cost you, or what's the
What's it
risk?
going to
Yeah.
cost you? The same thing. And so what's the risk if you don't do some sort of coaching in some sort of way for this level of leader, or to offer coaching even during a time when budgets are being cut and everything else? It's being able to show that you're putting the money in the right place.
Mhm.
So, how can you use your own coaching? That would be a good thing. How can I coach myself? What are the questions I would ask myself if I were the client and you were coaching me on how I could be better at selling my services? What are those questions I would ask myself? And then how can I go solve those?
So good. Loretta, so appreciative of you bringing so much. I mean, this is one of those interviews that I think you're going to want to listen to again and again, because you're going to continue to pick up, ooh, that's another piece. And you bringing your expertise and your experience forward is so delightful, and I appreciate that.
I
And ladies and gentlemen, oh, go ahead. I'm
I was
sorry.
just gonna say, I appreciate the time and just what you do with coaches because it is a world by ourselves. And I look for how can we be comrades together and share expertise. And I know when I get with coaches, I'm like, oh, good idea. Oh, I like that. So this type of approach and having a podcast like this, I think is beneficial all the way along.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for reaching out and letting me know what you do, because that's how I get great people like you on the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, one more time, just to let you know, A, how grateful we are that Loretta joined to share her expertise, and also how grateful I am that you joined us, because it is you listening every week, letting me know what resonates with you, letting other people know about the show. If what Loretta shared, you know that you've got a colleague who needed to hear this, share the show. Please let them know. Oh my gosh, this is the thing that I believe you could really help you move along. That's how we all do the heavy lifting together. And that's how we are kind to one another and we listen to one another about where those needs are. And hopefully this episode and other episodes at starcoachshow.com can help fill that gap for people. So until next week, this is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best for your success. I appreciate you being here, and I so appreciate you, Loretta. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really loved it. I loved our conversation.